Hi, everybody. I'm out sick today, so instead of me being there to help you with notes, here's a video of the notes. That way we can stay on track. So, today we're going to see how carbon puts things together, puts other atoms together to make the important molecules. So, molecules that contain carbon are called organic. And molecules that do not contain carbon are called inorganic. So in chemistry, if you take chemistry as a class next year, it's mostly inorganic chemistry. There are actually two completely separate branches. They'd be two completely separate kinds of chemistry classes. So for biology purposes, because all of our molecules, except water, have carbon in them, that would be organic chemistry. And living things mostly have organic molecules. Here's some words that are important if you didn't know. A macromolecule is a big molecule. Macro is the opposite of micro. So micro is small, like a microscope sees small things. Macro means big. Now, it's still a molecule, but it's a big molecule. Monomer is a small piece, and polymers are many monomers put together. So you can think of monomers like Lego bricks, and as you put more Lego bricks together, you make a polymer. First of the molecules we are seeing here is carbohydrates. They are made of carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. All organisms use them for energy, and some are part of cells, like we saw yesterday in the notes. The one that's you're going to see again is that one that's in the middle there. It's glucose. That is the molecule that everything uses for energy. You and plants and animals and everything else, we all use glucose, so that one's going to come back. But there's lots of other carbohydrates out there in the world. So a monosaccharide. The prefix mono means one, and saccharide is sugar. A monosaccharide is a simple sugar. They're small, they're easy to break apart. You can put them together and make a bigger sugar molecule or bigger carbohydrate. Some examples of a monosaccharide would be like glucose, fructose, galactose. And a good way to note if you have a carbohydrate is it ends in ose. Like glucose, fructose, galactose, lactose, cellulose, and other ones I can't think of right now. So usually if it ends in ose, that is a carbohydrate. In that top right picture, sometimes when you look at carbohydrates, they'll look like straight lines, or sometimes they look like rings. In real life, they look like that ring structured six-sided ring. That's what they call it in chemistry. I know it's not a circular ring, but it's called a ring in chemistry. So in real life, they're a ring, but sometimes it's easier to draw them out flat. So either way is correct, but that's why you see it in two different forms. If you take a bunch of those smaller pieces, those monosaccharides, and put them together, you'll make a polysaccharide. And poly means many, and saccharide is sugar, so it's many monosaccharides. That one in the picture is glycogen. That's actually a fat that we have. That's a bunch of glucose stuck together, and you can see it even goes off the page. Like that picture's not big enough. It just keeps going and going and going. Another example of polysaccharide for plants would be cellulose, and that's the one that's in plant cell walls and makes plants crunchy. Lipids. These are the fats, oils, and waxes. Now, they're all different, and they all look a little different. They don't have a monomer. They don't have like a common part that puts them all together. But the reason that all these are in a group together is because none of them like water. None of them will dissolve in water. If you think of like putting oil and water together, they separate. They don't like each other. The sciencey word for that not dissolving in water is called hydrophobic. We'll see that word again when we do water, but it basically means water fearing. Here are some lipid examples. There are more out there in the world, but here's a few for you. If it's a saturated fat, that means that every carbon in that molecule has up to 4 hydrogens stuck to it. So every carbon has a maximum number of hydrogens. That makes the molecule very straight and stiff, and it makes it easy for that molecule to compact on itself, so they are solid at room temperature like butter would be. In unsaturated fat, there's a double bond somewhere in those carbons, and that causes it to bend up. And because it's bendy, you can see in that picture on the right, because it's bendy, it doesn't form solids. It can't really compact together. So these are the liquid fats like oils. On the bottom there, that's a very specific lipid, but I gave you that one because it's guaranteed to come back again. A phospholipid, those are the kinds that are in your cell membranes. And they keep everything inside of your cells. So they're pretty important, and definitely going to see those again in biology. So phospholipids are similar to the fats that you see in the pictures above that, but they only have the 2 tails instead of 3. The thing that's interesting about phospholipids is that circle part that's kind of in the grayer box in the picture, they don't like, or they do like water. Sorry, mixed it up. The part in the gray box, they do like water. The tails don't like water. So you have a molecule that both likes and doesn't like water at the same time, which is a little weird. Usually they're one or the other. But I can tell you that your biology teacher, whoever you have for Bio B, will be very impressed if you can remember phospholipids. Proteins. They have a lot of different functions. Proteins do a lot of different things for us. There are proteins in cell membranes that let things in and out of cells. You've obviously got moving proteins like your muscle proteins. We've got proteins that move individual cells. Your immune system has proteins in it that help to recognize when not so great things are in your body and need to be killed. You have proteins that break down your food and other proteins that put together the molecules into new things. There's more that I can't even think of this morning. So proteins have a lot of jobs. This is the one where the monomer is a little weird because the word amino acid looks nothing like protein. So this one might be a little difficult to remember, but proteins are made of monomers called amino acids. And there are a lot of amino acids. There's a picture of them. You do not, trust me, do not have to worry about trying to memorize these or remember them, because when you get to Bio B and you have to know the amino acids, there's a table that has all of them in there, and you use that as reference. So for now, we're just looking at it to appreciate that they look complicated and that there's a lot of different ones and they all have different shapes. And we're moving on. So just remember, these are the amino acid pieces, and you put them together to make a protein. Don't worry about specifically each one. So, some more complicated protein words. Polypeptide is what happens when you have many amino acids that get bonded together. So poly means many, and peptide is the bond, so there's many amino acids bonded. Now, if you put a bunch of polypeptides together, that's when you make a protein. If you look at that picture that has the black background on the side, that is hemoglobin. It has 4 polypeptides. There's a different color for each one. But hemoglobin's pretty important because it's what carries oxygen in your blood cells. An important thing about that twistiness of a protein, that folding is really important because if it comes unfolded, then it's broken. It doesn't work anymore, and that's called being denatured. So that's not a good thing. You don't want your proteins being denatured because that means they don't work anymore. And our last molecule, nucleic acids. There'll be a whole unit just about them because they're pretty darn important with living things. But the job of a nucleic acid is to store and transmit genetic information. There's DNA, which is the one on the right with 2 strands. RNA is the one on the left with only the 1 strand. They are made of monomers that are called nucleotides. Now, an easy way to remember these, notice how they all start with NuCl. They kind of look like nucleus. If you can remember that DNA is in a nucleus, and things that kind of look like nucleus are DNA related. It's like nucleic acids, nucleotides, and nucleus. It's a good way to remember all of that. Parts of the nucleotide. You'll see this again, but these are the nucleotide parts that are put together. There is a phosphate group, which is that thing in the yellow circle. It just means it has phosphorus. That's the P. There is a sugar. Now, it's not quite the same as like sugar that you would eat, but it is a carbohydrate that is small, so we could call it a sugar or a monosaccharide. And then it has that fancy base thing on top. The main difference between DNA and RNA is the sugar. You can see that one has just a hydrogen and one has an oxygen and a hydrogen, which doesn't look like that big of a difference. But in chemistry, when there's just one little atom that's different, that changes everything. So the R in RNA stands for ribose, which is the one on the left, or sorry, the right, the green one. And DNA, the D stands for deoxyribose, which is the blue one. And that's all. So for the rest of class, you can do anything that you need to do. I would suggest doing vocab because you just got a whole bunch of words. Remember, though, if you're going to Google words to get the biology definition and not some other weird thing. If you guys need anything from me, you can send me a message on Schoology, and I hope that all this sickness goes away and I can be back tomorrow. So, see you later.